This time next week will mark 23 years since one of America's darkest days. Do you ever wonder why we only make a big deal about anniversaries that end in zeros and fives? This year is the 23rd anniversary of September 11th, and it will not be as big as the 20th back in 2021 and the 25th mark coming up in 2026. But there are people who live among us who still live with the memories and scars, and in many ways, our nation was forever changed. We are bringing you those stories of those witnesses and survivors as we vow to never forget 9/11. We start with Marty Singer. He worked at a business next to the World Trade Center, and he truly saw it all. When did everything change? Did you hear the first plane?
So September 11th started out as a normal day. It was a beautiful day in New York City. At that time, I lived in Brooklyn, New York, and I drove into work as I normally did. And there was a road called the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, which leads to the Brooklyn Bridge. And I normal drive into work, except in this case, as I made the turn off of the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway to get onto the Brooklyn Bridge, I noticed something unusual. I looked up, I saw some black smoke coming out of the North Tower, and I wasn't really sure what was going on. I happened to be on a cell phone talking to a friend of mine, and I said, I think there might be a fire in the World Trade Center. But I looked in my rearview mirror, and there was emergency vehicles coming behind me. I mean, it was just a stream of vehicles. And again, you know, it's New York City, and that's not unusual, especially, you know, when I looked up and I said, oh, there's just a fire there. So I continued on the Brooklyn Bridge, and the exit where I get off to get to my office is the Brooklyn Bridge exit, off of the Brooklyn Bridge onto Park Row. Now, Park Row is parallel to Broadway right by City Hall. But as I came off of that exit, by that time, the first plane had already engulfed the building. And I looked up and there was fire coming out of the building. And again, unbeknownst to me, not knowing what that was, but there were thousands of people standing in the street. My only objective was to get to work. You know, I was a senior manager for the company. I had been with the company at that time for 25 years. And also knowing the downtown area, I knew how to navigate the streets. And that, at that point, my story really begins. So I went through the back roads, and as I'm approaching Fulton Street, I will never forget this. There was a woman running towards me, screaming. I had my windows open, screaming, terrorist attack, terrorist attack. And that didn't, you know, resonate with me that this was a terrorist attack. And then I heard a loud noise, and it was very unusual, you know, to hear a noise like that. And then I looked up and I saw the second plane hit the South Tower, and I was 1 block away. And to me, that was just surreal, because I said to myself, what did I just see? Did I see a plane hit a building? You know, the towers. And again, my only objective was to get to work, not knowing what was going on. So again, knowing the downtown streets, I went and navigated the streets, went up a block the wrong way just to get my car into the garage, because again, I needed to get to work. So as I walked towards Park Row, again, there's even more people in the street, and now both buildings are on fire. And I'm a block away, and I'm standing in there's a center median, and I'm looking up with everybody else, and something seemed a little odd. At first, it looked like birds that were flying, but in reality, I saw people jumping out of the building. I was a block away, and it was a horrific scene, you know, to see that happening. There's one particular scene that's forever etched. I saw 3 people jumping out of the North Tower, and I guess they had to be about 80 stories up. And the only thing I could think, what would compel somebody to do that is the fact that the room must have been engulfed in flames. So they took that route, and it was terrific to see that happening. And just to fast forward a little, now the events where the towers start to come down, I see, again, standing in the center of median, I could see the South Tower starting to crumble. And when that happened, I ran into one of the retail stores that my company operated, and again, there were hundreds of people inside there, and the building collapsed. You could feel the ground shaking, and then there was a black cloud that engulfed the street, and it was like midnight outside. You could see out the window. The smell is something I'll never forget, and the amount of dust that was in the air was just permeating the entire store, and everybody was covered. And then at that point, we waited. I lost track of time. I don't know whether it was 15 minutes or it was an hour, but once the dust settled, I went outside to see what had happened. But the North Tower was still on fire at that point. And, on the street, the dust was, I would say conservatively, at least 6 inches high. And there was paper strewn all over, and the air had just I guess right now I would say it might have been the smell of jet fuel. But again, I had always been in the towers, and I knew what the lobbies were like, and I could only imagine what the upper floors were like. The lobbies were all marble. So marble dust, steel, just everything. I couldn't imagine what was in the air.
If you don't mind me, I'd just like to ask, does it feel like 23 years or does it feel like yesterday?
I can remember every second of that day, from the time I got there until the time I left on Wednesday afternoon. I was actually on site for 30 hours.
Wow.
So it seemed like yesterday.
Have you gone back to the site at all, or can you just are you not ready to even see that?
I've been back to the site many times. I find that being there is cathartic, and it really helped me to heal. I do suffer from PTSD, but there's a lot more to the story that as we go on. But I've actually been down. I was down to ground zero when they just had the reflecting pools. I went down the ramp, and I was crying as I went down the ramp, and went to the reflecting pools where the family was, and it was just an unbelievable scene. That's another scene that's etched in my mind.
Marty, I do want to ask you one final question. We have just a little bit of time, but what do you want America to know on the 23rd anniversary of this? What is the message you would like for folks to hear?
The main message is never forget. And also remember all of our first responders, strangers, just anybody. We all came together, and it's something that we need to do again today. We need to come together as Americans to support one another in whatever we do. One of the things that I do also is that I do volunteer work on a daily basis in helping other people. being able to utilize my knowledge, my skill set, and helping somebody else in need. And that I feel is really important. And it's so heartwarming to be able to give back. Because after what I've been through, 4 doctors said I shouldn't be doing this interview.
Marty, thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you.
Thank you.